Good afternoon. Welcome to this first meeting of the Early Childhood Subcommittee of the House Ways and Means Committee. Today is February 8th, and today we have two bills on our agenda, HB 208 and HB 25. We are going to start with just a discussion today, no vote on HB 208, and we have a special guest, Irene Padilla, who is the state librarian for the Maryland State Library Agency. We appreciate you very much being here, and I know you were at the bill hearing. We just wanted to have a bit more conversation and I think get a little bit more clarity about HB 208, which is County Public Libraries Overdue Library Materials Minors. So as was noted at the hearing, this bill really is a follow-up to a prior piece of legislation, which I believe our own Delegate Ebersol may have been the sponsor of a few sessions back, to prohibit libraries from charging fees to minors. And I'll say, just speaking personally, I think the intent of this bill is great. Really, today, I'm hoping we can just drill down and get some clarity on some particular provisions of the bill, because I just want to make sure we have this like as tight as possible so that we don't have any issues down the road in terms of what the intent is with the bill. So I do have some questions, but I will open it up if there's any issues or questions that folks wanted to raise about the bill. Delegate Ebersol, I saw you come off mute. Would you like to go first?
Yes. Thank you, Madam Chair. I think this question was asked during the hearing. The way the bill reads, it has to do with recovery fees for books that are not returned and the amount of time. And at the time, it said that a recovery fee would be struck if someone brought it back, if it was on record for them. But then it said if they had paid the recovery fee, it would be not refundable. And I felt that was a little risky because that would discourage people from actually bringing the book back earlier. Or if they had paid. So I was hoping that we could amend the bill to strike the word "not" in that particular location, so that, and I think that was the intent, and I think that that would probably make the bill more consistent. And so I'm going to suggest that amendment at that point.
Ms. Padilla, do you have any comments on that? Or I think maybe another possibility with that is if we could maybe still have a particular time frame where there's a grace period, but something longer than the current 21 days. So if somebody brings a book back 2 months later, 6 months later, is there some time frame that might be workable, do you think, from the library's perspective?
The issue with the individual library systems is they're very decentralized and they report to their own library board. So decisions as to timeframes are not easy to come to terms on. So I think the best suggestion is just say that to strike the word "not" and to let them, each library system, determine if there's a certain length of time in which they would want the material returned. Because I think the main issue we're looking at here, in addition to agreeing with the spirit of the original legislation, is that we want to have an incentive for these young people to bring the material back. It's not always easy to just replace a book. Sometimes they go out of print. And so I think what we want is the material back. And by removing the word "not," we ensure that and can move forward.
One thing you could do, Madam Chair, since all the library systems are required to adopt rules to implement this section under subsection E, is to say a reasonable length of time, and then it would be up to each local library system what that reasonable period of time would be.
I could live with that. It will be interpreted differently for each library, but I think once the rules are made clear within a library system, then it's easy to move forward.
If I may, Madam Chair.
Delegate Ebersol.
Thank you very much. The only problem I have with that is that this will discourage people from actually paying, because they know if they don't, that it will be struck. And if they pay, there may be a limitation on when they can get their money back. And so you might be discouraging people from actually at least trying to make restitution for not returning a book. So I find a small disincentive there, and I'm concerned about that. That the "not" fixes that, but adding in the possibility will return to what I was concerned about, I believe.
So I think, Delegate Ebersol, we can continue to have a conversation about that offline and try to work something out that might be reasonable. But are there other comments or questions. Otherwise, I'm happy to launch into some things. I will yield at any point if a colleague does have something and raises their virtual hand. So I'm just, as I was thinking through kind of the details of the bill and exactly how this might get implemented, I guess maybe starting with a basic question, do you know at what age a child can get a library card? I mean, again, recognizing that probably differs across all 24 jurisdictions, but for instance, if somebody was a parent of a baby and they were checking out books to read to their baby, can a baby have a library card?
Yes.
Oh,
You can have
interesting.
a library card from birth through life, your whole life, but starting at birth, if a parent chooses to get a library card for their child.
And is that true in all 24 jurisdictions?
That is
Okay.
correct.
Okay. Let me maybe walk through a hypothetical. I'll say this is actually true in my own family, but I have a feeling maybe other parents are in the same situation. My son has a library card. He's 8. We generally don't use his library card. I just check out all of the books for the family on my own card. Under the bill, what would happen if a parent had checked out the books on their account? They are clearly children's picture books. They are youth fiction. Would those materials be eligible under the bill? Because my read right now of the bill is maybe they wouldn't be. But it'd be certainly my hope that we would be including just any children's materials, even if they were not checked out by the child on their account.
Well, under the bill, they would not be covered. If you check your child's materials out, then you would have to pay the fee or fine. We debated this back and forth, and it came down to the fact that minors like to check out books that are older than just, juvenile fiction or nonfiction, whatever. And we don't want to discourage the avid readers from getting the materials they want. So we didn't want to limit it to the material type. Also, really, it comes down to a technical issue with the computer systems that we have and the registration practices. Those vary across the state too. So the librarians decided, library directors, that the best way to do it was have it be attached to the card and rather than to the materials.
Okay. So again, recognizing, the caveat, every library system is different. Do you think, so you're saying that there'd be some library systems that, they'd have to program it into their system, I guess, if I'm hearing you right, that they couldn't make a decision at the time that the library patron, comes in to deal with the late fees. They couldn't, waive something in the system at the time if, say, it was like kids' materials that were on the parent or guardian's account.
I would hope that any library would be willing to talk to a customer and say, hey, we understand where you're coming from, and we will waive the fines on these. I mean, we do all kinds of things to help people with fines. We offer volunteer hours in replacement for paying fines. We're not really after that funding. It's more of an incentive to have people return items. So I think it would be reasonable for you to ask for that. But as far as a standard approach, we decided to go with the card being the deciding factor as to how fines or fees are charged.
Okay, Delegate Ebersol.
Thank you again, Madam Chair. And anecdotally, I know this idea that a parent could check out books on their kid's card and not get fined. I can't imagine that would be a subversion that very many people would engage in. Also, Ms. Padilla, you can probably tell me how many libraries are not charging fines to adults across the state. I know I live in one right now. How many of them is this really not an issue between whose card it's on that adults are not also being charged fines?
My best recollection from when I saw the statistics many months ago is that about half are charging fines and half are not. And it really depends on the county to adults. I mean,
okay, so about half. And the other thing is that one time I returned a bunch of materials to a library and one was missing. And I came back and it was late. And this was when they were still charging fines. And I just said, it didn't make it in the stack. And I said, that's fine. And so this is also, although this is not law, I think, drilling down really hard here, the practices that libraries are really trying hard to treat us right. So That's just commentary. And thank you, Madam Chair, for your indulgence.
Not an indulgence. All conversation is welcome. Ms. Padilla, let me ask another question about this, because the bill speaks specifically to overdue fines and replacement fees. And I'll say I live in a jurisdiction where there are no late fees. There still are replacement fees. I think it's been a little while since we have not been able to replace, return a book. But in my county, I believe they still charge a fee for if you put a book on hold and don't pick up the hold with the held book within a certain number of days. Was there any conversation of including that kind of fee and not charging minors a fee for, not picking up a book?
I'm aware of that, and we haven't had that conversation in a while. I personally think that's the wrong approach, but again, we have library boards that and library staff who are annoyed because people will reserve items. They have to pull it from the branch that owns it, or possibly get it from another library system, have it delivered, shelved, labeled, etc., and then the person doesn't pick it up. So I can see their frustration with that. I personally would not charge for that, but I have to yield to the local level.
Okay, thank you for that perspective. Alistair, let me first go to Delegate Miracle North.
I want to make sure I understand the impact on this bill on localities. So I also represent Montgomery County, and I hope I didn't. I'm not repeating the chair's point because my Zoom got frozen. But in Montgomery County, all the fees, overdue fees, are waived, I think, regardless of whether you're a child or an adult, which for me has been a blessing in disguise, because I have a daughter who's a very avid reader, and she likes to hold on to books because she just loves them. And I almost thought that it was the unintended consequences of supporting our ability to nurture the love of reading, right, without having limitations on the time. So with this bill, would counties no longer be able to do what they do locally if we're saying, okay, no fees for the minor kids, but fees for the adults? But yeah, Montgomery County, there are no fees, period, I believe, for overdue books. I will make sure I understand the impact, basically.
If I understand your question, the counties that continue, county libraries that continue to charge fines.
That don't charge fines.
Okay.
It wouldn't affect them.
All,
Okay, I just want to make sure.
would just keep going along with that policy.
Okay.
The counties that do charge fines, let's say for adults, or replacement fees, then they would continue. Their board is responsible for setting that policy.
Okay.
So,
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Alistair, I think we had another question in terms of the date that in the bill about that a public library shall waive and may not attempt to collect any outstanding fees for overdue library books that are incurred by a minor after June 30th, 2021. Alistair, if you want to jump in,
Yeah.
what we're looking for some clarification on there.
Yeah, so I think the original intent here was to say that at the effective date of the act, if there had been previous fines or fees before the act went into effect, that they should be waived. I just wanted to clarify that that's your understanding as well, Ms. Padilla. Is that right?
yeah, we had to set a cutoff date so that people would know when to start working with the new legislation. So that's what that means.
So you're saying that those fees that were accrued before the effective date of the legislation could still be, like, if my child had which who doesn't exist yet, but if she had had checked a book out in 2019 and had a late fee, that could still be collected?
I think that is correct. However, I think at this point, by the time we work through this bill, because there was a lot of effort that went into negotiating this bill, that everyone just decided it was better to just move on and let things go and start afresh. So yes, if someone returned an item from that long ago, but on the other hand, if you were a persuasive parent, you could probably talk the librarian into not charging. They'd just be happy to have the material back.
So if that's the case, if that's the case, I think maybe this subsection should be deleted. It seems like it's duplicative of the subsection C, since it's only a prospective application of things.
I would be open to that. I'd like to see that amendment and run it by our AG, who's been closely associated with this. Her name is Lene Polk, and she would like to see that. But yes, I'm open to that.
And then one other question I had, Madam Chair, if you'll permit me, is the replacement fees are only for materials that haven't been returned. Do you think those fees are typically also charged for materials that are damaged, right?
That's true. And those, what are you gonna do? Fell in the bathtub.
Yeah.
It's no longer usable. So yes.
And so an amendment clarifying that it also applies to materials that are damaged would be okay.
Yeah,
You
I
think?
think so. We'd
Okay.
be happy to look at that.
Okay, great. Thank you.
What the whole point of bringing this back, it's really in a way a technical bill,
Mhm.
but it's really to make sure everybody's on the same page. So anything we can clarify would be helpful.
Thank you. Yeah, we appreciate the answers on all of this. I don't see any more hands raised from subcommittee members, so I'll say we will work on some amendments based off of the discussion today, and then we will share that with the stakeholders before we bring the bill back for a vote. So thank you very much. Thank you for being here.
Great to see everybody. Take care.
And then subcommittee members, we do have one other bill on our agenda. It is HB 25, Public Schools, Sexually Explicit Materials Prohibited in Libraries and Media Centers. We are voting on this bill today. I'm going to recognize Delegate Eversole for a motion.
Yes, Madam Chair, I'd like to move unfavorable on this bill.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Yes, I second that motion.
Okay, so the motion is for an unfavorable report on HB 25. Is there any discussion?
Madam Chair,
Yes, Delegate Hinson.
thank you. I received an email about this bill. I don't know if everybody received the same email that I did, but they attached a few examples in their support for the bill. Did anybody else receive an email? I can try to pull it up. My apologies.
I don't believe I've received an email about this bill.
It referenced a specific book and it had a
It's like a graphic novel, right? Yeah.
the image and what they sent was pretty alarming. And I'm wondering if that's the intent of the bill, if it would restrict any of that sort of content. If I can inarticulately try to pull this up and see if bring it to anyone else's attention. It just was gosh. Can we hold the bill to have an opportunity, or if you can, I don't know how much time we have before committee, and I apologize. I actually looked at the wrong agenda when I prepared for this meeting. So again, that's my apologies. Delegate Grossman, do you have the email, the date it was sent, or the name or anything I could query it and put my hands on it?
I remember seeing it. I don't have it pulled up in front of me, but it was a graphic novel image of two young men engaging in oral sex. That's what was sent to me.
That's what I saw as
that's what
well.
you're talking about.
Yes, and it was illustrated, so it looked like it was maybe marketed towards children because it was illustrated, but it was a very graphic depiction of sex, and they referenced it in the context of this bill. And I'm wondering if if the bill would be designed to restrict access to that sort of content, or how that image plays into the greater boundaries of this bill.
And I'm sorry, I have not seen this particular email, so I can't speak specifically to that. But I will say, right now our school systems do have their own ability to select library material and to decide what's appropriate or not. And I think we have heard some issues raised about the constitutionality of this bill. And I don't know if Alistair wants to jump in and elaborate on that point.
Sure. Yeah. So in the Island Tree School District versus Pico Supreme Court decision, which is the only time the Supreme Court has considered the removal of library books in schools, they found that the plurality of the court held that in creating policies in which ideas were prohibited from being shared was an unconstitutional breach of students' rights. And so I think that in this bill, through this a very broad definition of what is sexually graphic or obscene materials, I think that that might fall under that definition and would therefore not pass constitutional muster in review by courts. Sorry, go ahead.
I did not mean to interrupt.
No, I'm
I
mostly done.
appreciate that. I wonder if there's a way to narrowly tailor it then, because the depiction that was sent over to me, that's clearly like if it were a video, it would be pornography. If it were in a magazine that was on a store shelf, it would be, you know, age restricted for only adults to view that sort of content. And I know that there are ways that we legally do that and we don't impinge on people's right to free speech or to access that sort of material. If the bill as written is overly broad, is there a way to narrowly tailor it so that clear sexual acts, the same sort of thing that only adults could view in any other context, where we would mirror that sort of same language? Like, am I crazy? I mean, I don't know if anybody else saw that, but it was alarming.
In the interest of time, let me recognize Delegate Young since he's had his hand up.
So I found the email. It was sent on the 1st. If you just search sexually explicit, you should be able to find it. I have looked at the attachment, obviously not knowing the veracity of the attachment, but I will say that if it is true that this is in libraries, then that example is troubling. There is a period interest. I'm trying to look up what the Supreme Court talks about with regard to First Amendment and period interest, and I don't think that's the right term, but ultimately there is a narrow tailoring that could occur. I don't know if it's our job to do that or if it's the sponsor's job to do that. I will say that. But that being said, I would also argue that as drafted, it certainly would, in my opinion, be overbroad and need to be adjusted in a significant way. But that email does raise a concern that
I think Delegate Young's having some internet issues.
yeah, that's the General Assembly internet. Sorry. Did y'all hear most of what I said?
Please say it again.
Okay. High level, I found the email. The attachment is a problem. The email is February the 1st. Search sexually explicit. There is a First Amendment way to narrowly tailor the bill. I, however, don't necessarily think that's for us to do. I would leave that for the sponsor to improve on and then come back to us with something a little more tighter. And that the current draft, I think, is overbroad from a First Amendment perspective.
Thank you for that. Looking at the time, colleagues, Delegate Henson, do you still have your request to hold the bill for today?
I do, Madam Chair.
Okay, it's early in session. We will honor requests to hold bills at this point. So this HB 25 is held. And I think with that, we will adjourn so that everyone has a chance to eat some lunch and then head to committee. See you all soon, colleagues. We are adjourned.
Thank you.